The world of Ice and Fire has many terrible, sad, horrible stories that make you feel not so great. But are some stories sadder than others? Sure. So in the spirit of the month of giving, well, giving for Americans because of Thanksgiving, let me tell you two tales and you can tell me which is sadder. For this video, I will be telling you the story of the little boy burned for playing with a toy and the story of a woman that was punished for the sins of her son. Okay, let's tell the story of the two sons of Lord Clegane. So Lord Clegane had two sons, Gregor and Sandor, and one daughter. Around 277 AC, a woodcarver set up shop in the village under Lord Clegane's keep. To buy favor with the Lord, the woodcarver made wonderful toys and sent them to the Lord's children as gifts. Gregor got a wooden knight painted with every joint, pegged and separated and fixed with strings so you could make it fight. While Sandor, being around 7, of course wanted the toy his brother was given. At around 12 years old, his older brother Gregor really had no use for toys. He was already a squire, almost 6 feet tall and muscled like an ox. So Sandor figured, my brother won't miss the toy, and he took the knight toy to play with. However, eventually Gregor found out what he had done. In the room that Gregor found his younger brother, there was a fire. Gregor never said a word as he picked his younger brother up from under his arm and shoved the side of his face down into the burning coals. Gregor held his brother there as he screamed and screamed and screamed. It took 3 grown men to pull Gregor off Sandor and to get his face out of the fire. However, the damage was done, and Sandor would live with the scars of the attack for the rest of his life. The left side of his face would be in ruin, his ear burned away, leaving nothing but a hole. Down by his jaw you could see a hint of bone where the flesh had been seared away, and although his left eye was spared, all around it was a twisted mass of scars. Slick black flesh, hard as leather, pocked with craters and deep cracks that gleamed red and wet when he moved. The maesters gave the burned boy ointments, and Lord Clegane, to cover up the brutality of what his eldest son had done, told everyone that Sandor's bedding had simply caught fire. Let's tell the story of Lyanna Lannister. So you may know that the Ironborn and the Lannisters never really got along, mostly because the Iron Islands doesn't have a lot of resources, and they decided, hey, to fix that, we're going to Ṛîve. And they messed around with the Westerlands quite a bit. Now, despite this animosity, they did end up binding the Iron Islands and the Lannisters, the Westerlands, by intermarrying. Harmon Whore II spent his youth as a ward of the Lannisters at Casterly Rock, and when Harmon became king of the Iron Islands, the king of the Rock married his daughter Lyanna Lannister to him, hoping that that would bring lasting peace and stop all the reaving and shenanigans. But because it's the Ironborn and they have to ruin everything, Lyanna's and Harmon's eldest son eventually became King Harmon Whore III. And because he was raised in the faith of the Seven and didn't follow the Drowned gods, which were the gods of the Iron Islands, he made changes that the Ironborn didn't like, including outlawing reaving, salt wives, and thralls. This led to a very quick rebellion against the king. They weren't happy. They needed to reave, they needed their slaves, they needed to steal women. In this rebellion, he was overthrown, and his younger brother, Hagon Whore, took his place on the throne and decided to restore all the old traditions. But the Ironborn wanted more. They wanted more payment for what had been done for that small amount of time that they just couldn't be evil little bitches. So both the Lord Harmond, who was deposed of, and Lady Lyanna were mutated for their crimes of daring to eradicate Ironborn traditions. Lady Lannister's lips, ears, eyelids, and tongue were all removed before she was sent back to the Westerlands. Now, as you can imagine, that didn't sit well with the Lannisters. They're a very prideful house. Lyanna's nephew now sat as King of the Rock, and he decided he was going to go to war, and he was going to make them pay for what they did to his aunt. This war was pretty horrific. It resulted in the death of 10,000 and 3/4 of that were Ironborn. Finally, the Westermen landed on Great Wick, destroyed Haegon's host in battle, caught Haegon, and then mutilated and killed him in the 7th year of fighting. Despite that, the war between the Ironborn and Westermen would go on for 5 more years before finally making a peace arrangement. The Westermen definitely got the last laugh because even though there was a peace agreement, all that, they left the islands impoverished and in rough shape. All the fighting had drained the Ironborn resources, and the winter that followed their war was called the Famine War. 3 times as many Iron Men died of starvation than had died in the war between the 2 regions. So yeah, I guess never piss off a Lannister is the moral of that story. Also, I guess the Ironborn are raging idiots, but I don't know why you need a moral of just what is common sense. So which story is sadder? Yes, a woman was horribly mutilated and probably lived the rest of her life in just immense pain, both physically and mentally. But to me, the Ironborn got what they deserved in the story of Lyanna Lannister, and those that say the Iron Islands should be scorched and eradicated of all life, I really think they have the right idea. Also, you know Lyanna was taken care of for the rest of her life, and she came from a very wealthy family, so even though she couldn't live out the ending portion, the winter of her life, how she probably wanted to, she did get quite a few good decades and would be taken care of for the rest. The Clegane story is just sadder to me because a little boy was horrifically disfigured for playing with a toy. On top of that, his father never held his attacker, his own brother, accountable and lied to make him seem innocent. Because of how abusive his brother was and his father never holding him accountable for anything, Sandor would grow up with so much hate, not only for life, but also for anything his brother did. Even he refused becoming a knight because his older brother was one, and if his older brother was a knight, it obviously meant nothing. Or was for C words, and, we're using Sandor's words. But like, subscribe, and let me know below which story is sadder to you and why.